Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today we're on the set of one of my favorite movies, Ice Station Zebra. Just kidding. Today we're going to be talking about one of the very few weapons ever devised that could sink a battleship in a single hit. Battleships, despite all of their protection, are notoriously vulnerable against some types of hits. For example, below the waterline, being hit by several mines or several torpedoes can sink a modern and fully manned battleship. But even things like the atomic bomb would probably take more than one hit to sink a battleship. The ship sunk at Bikini Atoll took 2 atomic bombs, and even then, only one ancient battleship sank right away as a result of the blast. So it takes a very special type of weapon to destroy a battleship in one hit, and believe it or not, such a weapon existed during World War II. Right at the end of World War II, Japan modified its Ki-67 Peggy bombers, known as Hiryu to the Japanese, into basically flying laser beams. Laser isn't the right word for it, but that gives you a good visual of what these things could do. They were loaded with a 3-ton explosive charge, which, because none of these planes still exist today, there's still some debate as to whether it was a thermite bomb or a shaped charge or some combination thereof. But regardless, this aircraft became known as the Ki-167. It's distinctive because it has a camel hump on the back. It looks like a regular Peggy, except it's got this camel hump. And that is because the shaped charge takes up so much space in the aircraft, and they have it angled down at about 15 degrees. This aircraft was allegedly designed to be able to destroy tank formations. So like if American tank formations had been running around the Kanto Plains in 1946 during the invasion of Japan, you might have seen these aircraft basically flying down and shooting a laser through a whole formation of tanks. And again, laser isn't the correct term here, but we'll talk about that more in a second. But there's some evidence that as many as 2 of these aircraft were deployed against American warships right at the end of the war. And another raid for a squadron of these aircraft was going to attack Saipan, allegedly on August 16th, scheduled for the day after Japan surrendered and ceased hostile action. The modified Ki-167s were known as Sakura Dans. They had the crew reduced to just 4 members, which still seems like a large crew considering this aircraft is a kamikaze. It's designed to crash into the side of a ship and then set off its 3-ton bomb. In fact, it's approximately 6,400 pounds of explosive, so a little bit more than 3 full tons. And it's a shaped charge, according to some sources, which means that it probably had a copper cone on the inside, which, when the explosive gets set off behind it, basically turns that copper cone into a molten metal nail that'll go through armor. Typically, a shaped charge can punch through about 7 times its own diameter. Well, this particular bomb had a diameter of about 20 inches, meaning that one of these could shoot through 140 inches of steel, or approximately 12 feet. Which means that the 12-inch armored belt of an Iowa-class battleship potentially would not have been enough to stop it. Now, fortunately, these aircraft were flying bombs and they had no defensive armaments whatsoever. So even though some sources say that 2 of them may have flown against the American fleet, none hit any American ships. We would have known it if they had. So what likely happened was they were hit by either combat air patrol fighters or anti-aircraft guns from the ships and blew up catastrophically because it's just a flying bomb. So without any evidence of what these could actually do to a ship, how do we know that they're so dangerous? Well, the Japanese probably got this idea from a German technology blueprints of which were shipped to Japan on the submarine I-30 in October of 1942. This was the plan for the early quasi-missile, often referred to as Mistel. This was a Ju-88 bomber that was filled with explosives, a little over 4,000 pounds, so about Sakura-Dan was about 50% more explosives than this Mistel. And that Ju-88 filled with explosives had no crew on it. Instead, it would be slung under a fighter plane, either an Me-109 or an FW-190. And that fighter would fly what's normally a medium bomber filled with explosives towards the target, and when it had it locked in, it would release the missile that would keep going straight, and it would bank out and get out of there. The Germans actually tested this on a battleship. The French battleship Jean Bart, not the one you know from World War II, but the Colbert class battleship from World War I vintage, had been decommissioned before World War II started, and she was being used as a training ship, renamed as Ocean, to free up the name of Jean Bart for the Richelieu class battleship we all know of. So this training ship was mostly demilitarized, so when Germany invaded Vichy France and took over the former French Navy ships in Toulon, the active warships were scuttled, but Ocean was not. And so the Germans used her as a test target for one of their Mistel-shaped charge missiles. And that missile was fired into the faceplate of one of Ocean's turrets, which was 12 inches thick, with an additional 4-inch thick plate laminated on top of it for this test. And they found that the missile not only punched through that combined 16 inches of armor plate, it punched out of the back plate, which was another 14 inches thick. From there, it continued into the barbette of turret number 2, which was 11 inches thick. It punched out of the back of the barbette of turret number 2, and then it continued another 92 feet through the superstructure of the ship before it burned out. So we're talking about a projectile 50% heavier than this. And again, the way one of these shaped charges works is you've got a cone that you face towards the target like this. The explosive behind the cone is going to hit this part before it hits the edges. So it causes the cone to start to invert, and eventually it will form into a cone going in the other direction. The copper that this cone is normally made out of, from the end here, turns into, like I said, a molten copper nail that then stretches out and keeps going through the armor. And this punches a really thin hole in the armor that then allows more of the explosion through. This is the exact kind of weapon that's used as an anti-tank weapon today. Your main defense against this sort of weapon is reactive armor. So outside of the armor of the ship, there would be another angled plate like this, and when it gets hit, that plate would explode. So now it's going in both directions. So this shaped charge, instead of being able to just push directly into the armor, is actually pushing that reactive plate, and that is eating up a lot of its force before it hits the actual armor. No battleship ever built had reactive armor though. So Iowa-class battleships have zero defense against this sort of shaped charge, except for their own anti-aircraft guns. Had the United States continued the war against Japan, had Japan not surrendered, had we gone to Operation Downfall and sent the U.S. fleet with New Jersey as its flagship to attack Japan, Japan would have unveiled these super kamikaze weapons in force. And they would have targeted the capital ships, the carriers, and the battleships. And one of these weapons could have defeated the side armor of an Iowa-class battleship. We've talked about that defense in depth earlier on, but able to punch through more than 90 feet of unarmored space, in addition to several layers of armor, as we see with the German weapon on Jean Bart/Ocean. We know that that could punch through any part of an Iowa-class battleship. It could potentially punch in one side and out the other side. Can you think of any weapons that would be more devastating against a battleship? Let us know in the comments section down below. Like I said earlier, there aren't many things that can destroy a battleship in one hit, but I believe this Sakura-Dan shaped charge kamikaze missile is one of the few things that could. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to continue donating to support us. You can also support the museum by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and our channel. Thanks for watching.